Children of single parents, who was the worst person your parent has dated? My dad started dating a woman who firmly believed that I was part of his old life and that he needed to cut ties with me. I was 14 and became terrified my mum would find someone who would do the same, and I'd end up with no family. My mom dated a dude who beat the living shit out of me. Dude and his brother took turns punching me in the face while the other held me down. I was about 11 at the time. My mom didn't bother to remove these turds from her life either. I am now in my 40s and still have scars on my face to remind me about it. A few months later, while I was at a summer camp paid for by a charity organization, the same dude put her in the hospital. A few weeks after that, I went to live with my aunt and uncle. She stayed with the dude. I haven't spoken to her in close to 20 years. He was called Greg. He was an abusive wanker. He used to lock me and my brothers out in the rain while my mum was at work. Had no way of contacting her, before kids had phones. He did it in all weathers. He broke my mum's arm in front of me and my brothers. He grabbed my face so hard his nail left a cut in my cheek. My mum and my two aunties got their own back though. My mum stole his change jar. His change jar had notes in, there were no 1PS or 2PS, only silver plus. One auntie smashed every single thing he had. Car windows, house windows, TVs, everything. She also promised to beat him whenever she sees him. She's kept that promise and has hit him 7 times so far on nights out. My other auntie kept reporting him to his boss for things he hadn't done, but they couldn't disprove, like being horrible, swearing at her. He was fired. He was a real piece of shit, and the actions of my family may have been drastic, if not illegal, but he most definitely deserved this. Well, as far as my mom's concerned, my bio dad is the clear winner. Bastard thought feeding a baby Coke and beer till she passed out was parenting. Then he thought that beating the duck out of anyone who questioned him and locking his daughter in the crawl space till she stopped crying was healthy parenting. Managed to cut him out of my life at 16. At 19 he tried to shoot the cops that came to answer the domestic violence call. He missed, but the cops firing back riddled his 86-year-old neighbor with bullets. He's up for parole in 4 years. None of his girlfriends liked me, so they didn't give a shit. Some of them enjoyed it. Mom's not perfect either, but I'm gonna take emotional neglect over bio dad's nonsense any day. My dad's ex-fiancée. She was almost our evil stepmother until one day she decided to call me a fat lazy bitch, and my dad realized how awful she was to my sister, and that was the day I learned how much he actually cared for us as well. He dumped her ass and kicked her out of the house. Her awful daughter left too, and it was finally peaceful at my dad's again. He dated her on and off for years afterwards until she went back with her ex-husband. My dad has sworn her off for good now, which I'm glad for, since she was a toxic person. I wish he could find someone worth his time though. I know he gets lonely. I can think of 2. First of all, my biological father. They got back together for a few weeks. He was a dick. I'd recently got my first pet, a ginger kitten, but I was having previously unknown allergy issues with it. Things were stabilizing for me though, and I was getting used to it when one day my new cat disappeared. My dad admitted he let it out the door because he knew I'd been struggling. I spent weeks searching but never found it. The second was my stepdad. He was actually a really good guy and head over heels in love with my mom. I actually miss him a lot. The reason he was one of the worst? Well, my mom died when I was 17, and overnight my stepdad changed. Within a month he was in a relationship with another family member, and suddenly he was violent and abusive. Left me with no food or money, attacked me for accidentally breaking an ornament of his, and ultimately forced me to run away from home. I was on couch hopping for 9 months and never spoke to him again. We'll call him Josie. Younger than my mom, chronically unemployed, a drinker, violent, and literally illiterate. But good looking, so my mom was smitten. My mom was from a good, in name, family, she had education, she had 2 little daughters. And she brought this scumbag to our peaceful little apartment and he settled in right away, beating the shit out of all of us, impregnating my mom 4 times, running off for months, coming back, never paying child support. When he was around, he mercilessly beat on us and my mom just stood by like a ducking twat, not intervening. One morning my little brother, who was maybe 2, woke up and was hooping up and down in his crib for attention. Jose, a grown man, smacked that poor baby so hard in the face that the baby flew across the crib and hit the other side and slid down. Finally, my mom got diagnosed with lupus and Jose found out and literally abandoned her at the pharmacy. Years later, we find out that he had been sexually abusing my older sister. I am still so mad at my mom for the decade of bullshit we endured with that man. He was literally a cancer and she couldn't summon the self-esteem to leave him, even when he was beating us with extension cords. There's a poem by Nayera Waheed called Before You Get That Key Made that should be handed to every single mother. Duck your loneliness. Protect your kids. My stepdad, after being with my mom for 18 years, he finally told me he and a friend of his killed my dad. Or possible the asshole she's with now. My dad met this woman that he thought was perfect. They got along really well and so they got married. 5 years later and I've moved out after being emotionally abused by this amazing woman for years. It was bad enough that I kept trying to kill myself. She told me that I was a bad person who would never achieve anything. She told me that my stepdad deserved to die and that my mother was a bad person. She told me that I was a disappointment and a burden. She lied to my dad and told him that I hit her. She called the police on me for locking myself in my own room. At one point she slammed a door in my face and the towel rack on the back gave me a black eye. She gaslighted me about everything. She wanted to keep me on medications that kept me from functioning because I was easier to handle when I didn't fight to be treated like a human. All my friends were satanic punks and I wasn't allowed to be happy because my laugh was loud and obnoxious. She called me selfish for wanting to be treated better. She told all her friends I was a delinquent despite being a quiet straight-A student. She was a rude, manipulative cunt. She ruined my mental health and I'm still working to fix all the damage she caused. My dad isn't happy but he won't leave her. She is a horrible person whom I have no respect for. TL, drive, my stepmom abused me and is abusing my dad. My mom is a serial dater. I have long since stopped paying attention to who she was dating. There were a few doozies. So let me talk about them. B. He came into my life when I was still forming self-awareness and memories. All I remember of him was screaming at my mom about leaving. G. A drunk who was verbally abusive. I remember him once deciding that I was not to leave the table until I had finished every bite of the meatloaf that he made that night out of the blue. I threw up after stuffing myself with it. Mom stood there while this new rule was randomly enforced. He also called my brother, who had been injured, a bastard because he had complained of pain while standing up. Apparently that was a personal attack, and he needed to cuss out a 5th grader. M. A foster parent of 8 very unwell boys. I was the only girl in the house. There was sexual abuse that I was blamed for from his foster boys and from his own son. He would scream at me like his foster children because I didn't want to play basketball with them. I was screamed at for humming. He eventually had to move me into his closet, so that's where I slept, while he would drop his clothing on me in the morning. He was cheating on my mom while she fed and clothed and parented all 11 children in that house. When they broke up, Mom blamed me because I had torn the family apart when I told a teacher about the sexual abuse I was experiencing. Some guy she met at a bar. He was really interested in meeting her children, specifically 10-year-old me. Within 2 hours of him coming into the house he had invited us all out to a nude beach nearby. It was very freeing, he insisted, and he thought I would love it there. Mom didn't make him leave the house for the night, and I slept in her room with the door locked. P. Of all the assholes, this is who I hate the most. They dated on and off for a few years. I hated him from the minute I met him because my gut and my history had already labeled him as untrustworthy and a shithead. I wasn't wrong. Not only did he cheat on my mom throughout their relationship, he had hidden his AIDS status with my mom and also insisted, culturally, that he could not wear condoms. Mom thankfully hasn't tested positive for HIV, but part of me wants to deport that ducker. His name was Jeremy, the only man my mother ever had around me. He would beat me and tried to bribe me with toys, but I wasn't a normal child, I wasn't interested in toys and couldn't be manipulated. A very long story short, I told my big uncle, the criminal, the one that was fiercely protective of my mother, and Jeremy was literally never seen or heard from again. Whatever my uncle did to make him go, he did a damn fine job. He made sure I knew he was always there for me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos.